Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the best damn pod in the land. I'm your host, Chad Stryker. With me, as always, is Dan Dibjack. Dan, how we doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Ready for. I think I'm ready for warmer weather. We had warm weather here for a couple days, so kind of like spring fever, and then it got cold again. So
Yeah, it's kind of bipolar outside right now by us. So
yeah,
hot one day, cold the other day. Does great things for your sinuses and your head, right?
right. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing when we talked earlier. So
Yeah.
yeah, I took the weekend, and we can talk about this off the cuff. I took the weekend to really think about the Chip Kelly thing. And so we have some listener questions we're going to get to. And one of them has to do, and it's actually from a Team Up North fan about Ryan Day giving up play calling. So I thought, I know everybody was interested in that. I had people messaging me about it. So I think we'll address the Chip Kelly thing with that listener question. But I wanted to get to, we talked about this off the air, the Larry Ventresco. So Larry's a follower of ours. He put in a question for the pod a couple days ago. And I wasn't really in a place to be prepared to answer it because I'm not a lawyer. Guess, shocker. But he wanted to know, what do we think will come of Tennessee and Virginia's lawsuit against the NCAA? And I know, if you guys don't know, Dan lives in Tennessee. He's in Nashville, so he's got a pretty good beat and pulse on what's going on. So Dan, what do you think is going to happen with all that?
Yeah, well, first I just also need to clarify I'm not an attorney. I do play one on Facebook every once in a while.
Yeah.
Depending on what sort of rabbit hole I'm willing to dive down into. But here's my take on it is that basically, the University of Tennessee, they did everything right when it came to handling the Pruitt situation. They did their investigation. They turned over all the findings to the NCAA. They felt like they were a model citizen per se when it came to handling a violation of that level.
Yeah.
And, they had sanctions that came down, but they weren't nearly as harsh as they could have been if they were handling it like, let's say, somebody who wanted to lie about a cheeseburger. They did everything the right way. So for the NCAA to get through that and commend them publicly on the way that they handled that, only to turn around and then file sanctions or a notice of allegations, no sanctions yet, with the dealing of Nico, their stud quarterback recruit,
right.
It pissed them off.
Yeah.
It upset them, and they basically joined forces with Virginia. And their whole premise is that, hey, listen, and we're going to see this more and more. The whole thing is like, you cannot limit what a student athlete can do to earn money. And period. If you're ruining, or if you're trying to prevent them from earning money, then we are going to go ahead and file a lawsuit, and you're going to lose, because that's what's happening. I mean, the NCAA is getting crushed in court.
Yeah.
And so that's basically the crux of the lawsuit, is that A, you don't have clear rules, and B, you're limiting this individual from earning a living and making money off their name, image, and likeness, which you cannot do. It's a violation of antitrust laws.
So I'm gonna, Dan, we're near the same age, but not quite the same age, and so I remember when I was on scholarship, I was only allowed to work 7 hours a week to help with buying my food or paying for tuition, because we had workouts in the morning, we had study table in the evening, you had your classes you had to attend, you had practice you had to attend, and the NCAA then, and I'm taking this back to the early 2000s, only allowed us 7 hours. I don't know what yours was like in Arizona. I know it was probably everywhere for the NC2A, but because I worked at Home Depot and pushed carts on Sundays usually, because that was about the only day I could, 4 or 5 hours till they in the afternoon, to make a little extra money. So it's a big deal. Like, what's happening is a big deal, and what's happening with the lawsuits against the NCAA, they're rapidly becoming irrelevant, in my opinion. Now, I do think that there's going to be a shift, and a fundamental shift in the way that college athletics are run. And I think that some of the lawsuits that are occurring in the NIL space, I just don't know how much, in my personal opinion, how much the NCAA is going to be able to control. They opened the rabbit hole, and it exploded. and I don't think there's any way to put I'm going to say the genie back in the bottle rather than the rabbit back in the hat. I don't know that they can do that. I think it's going to be up to, personally, I think it's going to be up to the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, all the different leagues to come up with some sort of, I don't know, bylaws, I'll call it. But if the students ended up becoming employees of the university, watch out.
Well, I mean, you just had the ruling, in the Dartmouth case, right?
Oh yeah, the Dartmouth.
I mean, they were deemed, the members of their basketball team were ruled by the Supreme Court to be employees of the university. I mean, you're talking about a school that does not give out athletic scholarships.
Right.
Right. So if they're deemed employees of the school, anybody that's getting an athletic scholarship most certainly is going to be. They kind of outlawed it in the lawsuit, and I'll just, dumb it down for everybody because that's how I best understand. Is they're basically telling people that they have to choose an employer without knowing what they're going to get paid. And that's the crux of this most recent lawsuit, is that you're telling these kids that they're allowed to get paid for their name, image, and likeness, but they can't discuss it until they're employees of a company. Like, they're supposed to show up on day one and find out what they're going to get paid. I mean, that's the crux of it. That's the simple, dumbed down version of what they're basically arguing in this case. And it's just going to be another example of the NCAA losing. And at this point, Chad, I'm not even sure that they're not trying to lose. Like, I think they're inevitably, or they're ready for the inevitable. I joked before, on a previous podcast that, they're hiding behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, and just laughing at everybody because they gave them what they wanted, and now it's complete chaos. So, to your point, it's only a matter of time before all these member institutions break away from the NCAA for football. I don't think it'll happen in basketball. The March Madness is just too successful.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to propose that question to you. What if football breaks off and the NCAA governs everything else, but then they leave the football regulations to each of the conferences, or an interconference agreement? What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think that could happen?
I think that's what's going to happen. I think with Sankey and Petiti, joining forces with the SEC and the Big Ten, that's what they're working towards. And, for them to say that, they're just coming together to hold conversations, it's nonsense. They're coming together to figure out how they're going to break away from the NCAA. The bigger question is that, if they break away from the NCAA, what's that do for Title IX? I think that as long as the scholarships are still funded with federal dollars, then football is going to be subject to Title IX. But if it gets to the point to where football is like, those students are no longer receiving federal funds in some form or fashion, that means they might not be, accountable to Title IX. And that can destroy women's sports.
It could. There's a lot of other things that feed into that too with Title IX. Yeah, we could honestly do a 3-hour show on this. Yeah. But I wanted to thank Larry Ventresco, good friend of the show, for the question. I hope that kind of answers your question, Larry. I mean, this is out of the realm of my expertise for sure. I do deal with a lot of contracts in my professional career, but I'm not a legal expert. And I know I appreciate Dan kind of taking the lead on this one, because it's definitely not my forte. And I can see that, this is a huge can of worms, and I'm really interested to see who wins, what comes out of this. And I'm interested to see the timing, because if Florida State gets an NOA and Tennessee's got an NOA, and then we've already seen one to Michigan for the cheeseburger thing, and then we end up with another one for the Connor Stallions stuff, which I don't know, when that'll happen, but I've seen some people postulating that it'll be late spring before we see any kind of information come out about that. We'll see what happens with the NC2A. So thanks, Larry. Appreciate the question. And now I know you were excited about this. I saw all the Twitter banter, Dan. This question was submitted by Cooper Bucks, another good friend of the show. how do we see Judkins and Trey being used in the same backfield together? And since you were so excited, I'll let you go first, even though I think we share the same amount of excitement about this. But yeah, it looks to be a really hot topic.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited about this whole scenario now. There needs to be a huge caveat with all this is that Day's going to need to sign off on putting both of them in the backfield at the same time. It was maddening over the last year or two, never to see that deployed very often. But it's a staple in Chip Kelly's offense, especially when he was at Oregon, and he started to see it more at UCLA, not so much in the NFL, but at Oregon in particular, when he goes split backs, the options off of that are unlimited.
Yes.
I mean, his whole offensive philosophy is to stress the defense. He does it with tempo, and then he also does it with scheme. And so to be able to go split backs with tempo, I don't know if anybody's going to stop him. I really don't. I mean, there's so many things that you can do with that. You can run the inside zone, you can run the outside zone, you can run the sweep action that he likes to do, the QB run game. But for, you fake that inside zone up on the inside, and then you got the QB and the other back going out for their RPO on the outside. It's unlimited. And I'm super excited to see it happen. One caveat to all that, and I don't think we're going to have a problem with this, but it would require, those guys to be willing to block a little bit.
Yeah.
Depending on the play. I mean, a lot of the split back stuff has one back leading for the other up inside the A and the B gaps.
Yep.
So they're going to have to be willing to do that to set up the other stuff, which I don't see that as a problem with these guys. I mean, Trey is physical from what I've seen from Q. He's physical. It's just his Day going to allow him to do it because he's worried about depth.
Yeah. So I've seen so much conversation about this. As a matter of fact, I actually submitted this question to Kevin Noon, via Super Chat when he was doing his Big Me Kickoff show. And he said that, that a lot of people are excited about it. And I think that they will do it, but having not even seen a spring practice yet, it was tough to answer. And I thought that was a fair assessment. But there is a lot of excitement about it. I do think it's interesting to see now that you do have Will Howard that will run the football. So you've got, if you put Judkins, Trey and Will Howard all being willing to run a football, and then don't sleep on the fact that Emeka Egbuka is back, because they like to run that jet motion with Egbuka. And if he's back and healthy, that makes a big deal. So that just adds another wrinkle to the offense. I do see them doing it. I think that they will do it more frequently than we've seen in the past. I thought that with Chip Trainum, that they had an opportunity to use him in the Mitch Rossi role, I like to call, where he was like a fullback / H-back / tight end and as a lead. And I don't know if he just didn't want to block, or maybe Day just didn't want to do it, or maybe the offensive line was so crappy that it didn't matter. I don't know. But I think there's an opportunity to really just, what this reminded me of, and I thought back a long time. Do you remember it was Reggie Bush and Glendale White, Thunder and Lightning, or whatever they called it, that's what this reminds me of, because Judkins is a little bit bigger of a back. He's bigger or thicker than TreVeyon Henderson, at least. The way that guys just seem to like bounce off his lower body. When I was watching some of his runs, the guy, some of those guys just seem to they bounce off his lower body. So I'm excited to see it. I like the idea of the jet motion, and I like the idea, to me, that I think they could do a lot of running in the A gap, so they could do some real downhill stuff, and then all of a sudden Will Howard pulls it, he goes out the backside. I think that would be great to see. So yeah, we'll. I mean, I think they're going to do it. I don't think you cannot do it. So if I were a betting man, I'd say it's 99-1 odds that they're going to both be in the backfield, at least some together. And I'm not sleeping on Dallin Hayden either. So I want to throw that in there, that Ryan Day specifically mentioned Dallin Hayden in his press conference, that they have 3 quality backs. And so wouldn't be surprised to see some Dallin Hayden mixed in there with those two. What about you?
I think we're going to see a lot of Dallin Hayden, only because, I think Q and Trey are truly 1A, 1B in any order that you want. And, maybe, and especially if, if we're coming off a series where they, just ran split backs the whole time and tempoed and, ran down the field and they need a little bit of a blow, I think Dallin's going to be in there a lot. But, I think Dallin's going to get the majority of the second half carries this year, because if you're not going to, it's not like they're going to rest Trey and not Q, or rest Q and not Trey, right?
Yeah.
When the game's out of hand.
Right.
So I think both those guys will be, they'll have their helmets off once the game's out of hand, and that leaves Dallin. And James Peoples. And I think Dallin's going to get a lot of work. I think it's going to, be necessary for him to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing that I am not oblivious to is that I think that you have to keep the guys healthy. There has to be rotation. And it would not shock me in the slightest to see them go out and get like someone in the transfer portal we're not talking about in the running back room. Like, I know Peoples is coming in highly rated. They're bringing in Sam Williams-Dixon, so it's a 2 running back class. Missing out on Jordan Lyle. Flipping to Miami kind of changes the numbers in that room a little bit more than I think what we were even expecting. So I wouldn't be surprised to either see them because Wiltrell Hartson, who was there last year, is I think now in a transfer portal, and he was a walk-on from Massillon. So I think the numbers are a little different in that room than what anybody anticipated. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a MAC guy, and I saw where what's his face at Maryland said his third string running back wants $100,000, so there might be some guy out there that, we have a really good NIL package, maybe somebody's willing to come in and take lesser reps this year, knowing that, you're going to go probably be in a playoff and get some exposure. So I would not be surprised if they went and brought somebody in, but I would also not be surprised if they didn't. So, yeah,
no, I think that, it's going to take 15 to 17 games now to win the title, right?
Yeah.
If you do not play in your conference championship, then it means that likely you're not in the top 4, almost guaranteed not to be in the top 4. So it's a 17 game trek. If you're in that, 5 through 8,
yep,
and played in your conference championship game, or 16 if you're in the top 4. So, you're looking at 15 to 17 games. It's a long season. Depth's going to be more important than ever. I think that's one of the reasons that it was such an easy, decision for Q and, to come on up, and for Trey to welcome them with open arms, is they get it.
Yeah. And I, for Friday, I actually have this question already posed for Friday. I haven't told you about it yet. Sorry. Okay. But we have Bo Jackson and Marquise Davis, both in the state of Ohio, for 2025 running backs. And there's a pretty heavy duty rumor that Davis only wants to be the only back in the class. And I don't think that that's manageable. That load management you can't do that in today's football. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see if your thoughts on that and why you think that is. But again, it's a rumor. I haven't actually talked to the young man. I don't know if that's actually, it's just one of those things that when you hear that, you go, that's interesting.
Yeah, that pretty much goes against everything that, you're hearing in that type of a room now,
right?
From the NFL weird. On down, it doesn't, and I think that's going to be a little dependent too. I mean, if it's a school that's been taking 2 or 3, the 2 or 3 years before him, then I can see where he's going to look at the depth chart a little bit. But, Trey's gone after this year.
Right.
I mean, Q's got a year left, but I think we're all assuming that he's pretty much gone after this year.
I think he's one and done this year.
Yeah, I mean, he had way too many carries in his first 2 years to play a 4th year. So, I mean, if there's a place that I wouldn't worry about that, it's Ohio State, which is kind of crazy to say, but, that room is just – I mean, we had, 3 guys leave, right? Yeah. We had Chip. We had Pryor. Was there a third one, or do we think it was going to be Trey? Meatball.
Yeah. Chip, Mayan, and Trey, or Chip, Mayan, and Evan Pryor. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had 3 of them leave. I was really sorry to see Evan Pryor leave. I just think that kid had a chance to be dynamic, but he just couldn't stay healthy.
Oh yeah. I really thought he was going to be just something really special. and I thought he was going to be what I wanted Curtis Samuel to be. So
Yeah.
I don't know that we used Curtis Samuel the right way, but I have this great image of him jumping into the end zone against overtime in Michigan against
Oh yeah.
Michigan, you know. But I thought that I don't think we utilized him the right way, unfortunately. But I thought Evan Pryor, because he catches the ball so well and he's really good in space. But well, Evan Marshall-esque, you know.
But going back to the Bo Jackson thing, I mean,
Oh yeah, sorry.
you're looking at three guys.
Yeah.
If Q and Trey are both gone, you're looking at three guys coming back in that room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of them, I mean, Williams Dixon, they're still talking of him playing a different role, maybe on defense even.
Yeah, I don't see that. I think he's going to be more of a swing slot scat kind of guy and returner. But you know, it's also hard to say because he transferred from West Holmes, which is within 30 miles of me, maybe less, or 30 minutes, excuse me, and he went to the Columbus area to play, and then he got hurt, and so he dominated up here. You know, they were beating teams 70-0, beating people up here the way that you should if you're Sam Williams Dixon, and but we didn't really get to see it, you know. So, anyways, yeah, I'm gonna pull a Dan Ribben and say I digress as a joke. Yeah, so. Okay, so I'm going to answer a question from a Michigan fan, Emerson Mack, who now I do have people from Michigan who do follow me, if you were wondering, and he's one of the real ones. Like, we can actually talk ball and like put our bias aside. And there's a couple of them. Some of you guys know those guys. Swanky Wolverine's another one. There's like that new Tom Adelsberg and stuff. And so some of these guys are like, you know, pretty decent to talk to other than like leading up to the game. So he wanted to know if we believe that Ryan Day will actually give up play calling duties, and you know, because he said he was going to last year, and you know what possible benefits we see from it.
You want me to take that first?
I'll let you fire away, man.
So I'm gonna in a very friendly way, so don't get your hopes up. Ryan Day is not calling the plays anymore.
Yeah.
For our friend from up north.
Yeah.
No, I'm convinced. I mean, last year was different, right? I mean, he never committed to it 100% last year.
Right.
He talked around it. He you know, when he talked about it, it was just as if he was running for office, right? He was talking out of both sides of his mouth. And at the end of the day, I mean, Brian Hartline's never called plays before. Ever.
No, never.
And that's not something you just learn, right? And you know, there's different stories out there. You know, some of the stories say that Hartline was calling plays in the spring, and Knowles was just, you know, eating his lunch. There's other rumors
in the spring game.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah, he did. Brian Hartline did call some of the play because you could see the rhythm change.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but being at the spring game, I could absolutely see it. And this actually leads into our next question anyways with the spring game. But yeah.
So no, I mean, I just think it was different, right? I think last year, Ryan knew that he needed to, and he just was having a hard time letting go. It was that bounce back girlfriend type of a thing, right? He's like, you know, he said things were over, but he knew they really weren't.
Yeah.
And it was easy to get her back.
Yeah.
So I just don't look at last year as the same as this year. I think with the hiring of O'Brien first and now the hiring of Kelly second, those guys aren't coming here to, you know, put their binoculars on and, you know, say what the end's doing on every play, right? They're up there. They're here to build. They're here to call plays, and that's why I've got zero doubt whatsoever that he's going to go through with it. He's actually. I mean, he has spoken it into existence this year.
Yeah.
Whereas last year he avoided that at all costs.
Yep. Well, and so I'm going to address the Chip Kelly thing, but I want to do our show Friday around a lot of it because after the introduction this week. So, sure. So losing Bill O'Brien was frustrating for me because it took me a while to get behind the Bill O'Brien train. And I tweeted this out. I meant it when I said it. Like, it took me a little while to get on board with the Bob train. And when I did, I was like, okay, he's been to Bama. Like, he's been in the NFL. He's been a head coach at Penn State. So he knows the Big Ten. He knows the SEC. he can take over coaching the quarterbacks from Ryan Day. So there was a lot to like that, I got behind. And then when the news broke that he, when we went on air Friday, right as we were going on air, I was like, okay, everybody's saying Chip Kelly, but is it really Chip Kelly? And then Chip Kelly comes in, and I think, okay, well, I think this allows Ryan Day to really let go. And so, Emerson, that's my answer. Ryan Day can really let go because Chip Kelly can be the head coach of the offense. Jim Knowles can be the head coach of the defense. And that's exactly what Ryan Day did when he fixed the defense. He brought in Jim Knowles and said, the defense is yours, sir. I think he can let go of the offense and hand it over to Chip Kelly and say, the offense is yours, sir. And he can fool around with the special teams. He can help with the quarterbacks, but he can be the CEO, most importantly. And so I like the move. I think it makes a lot of sense. I'll talk a lot about that on Friday. I've already been making notes for Friday about it, and just kind of, you and I can have a little friendly banter back and forth, because I think we both like the hire. I don't want to speak for you, but I like the hire. But my take is Chip Kelly is now the head coach of the offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love the hire. I was excited about Bob. I'm way more excited about Chip Kelly. I think one of the biggest questions that needs to be asked is he going to call plays from the box, or is he going to be on the field? He's been calling plays from the field for his entire – I mean, I don't know what he did as an OC at Oregon before he got promoted. But since he got promoted, everywhere he's been, he's called the plays and he's called them from on the field. So that's a really interesting dynamic that
Right.
I'm going to be, interested to see play out. Man, I'd love to be there when ones are on ones in practice, huh? And they're really going.
Yeah, I know, and I actually think you're going to have even more limited availability to the spring practices than they did than the media did last year, and so we'll see. But we got a lot of time. We got I think it's 60 days exactly from today, Tuesday, until the spring game, and you've got 14 practices or 15 practices 14 in the spring game. So there'll be some stuff that we can definitely talk about between now and then. And then I'm going to lead right into that. So Woody68, one of my actually favorite followers on Facebook, he actually played for Woody Hayes. He was one of Woody's boys, believe it or not. So he had messaged me about it and like how he became a fan and different things like that. So he wanted to know if I thought, or we think, this is the most anticipated spring game in recent memory, or I'm just going to say ever. Now, caveat to this, I didn't start going to the spring game until like 94. So I 93, 94, I'd have to go back and look at like my ticket. Like I save all my tickets. Now they're digital. I can't save them, but I'd have to go back and look at my first spring game, but it was in the early 90s. So most anticipated spring game, Dan?
I mean, it's got to be in my lifetime. It's. I usually take it with a grain of salt. I think I've mentioned the other day that it's really become a glorified flag football game. But
yeah, you did.
It'll be interesting to see if that changes this year, though, because now you've got Chip Kelly's philosophy coming on board, which I think leans more towards the science and probably rest and stuff like that. But I'm interested to see if the Alabama kids that have come into the locker room have a little bit of an influence on how that game is played.
A little bit of juice.
Well, I know for a fact that in the Alabama spring games, like they went full contact. They went to the ground. They went to the ground.
Well, Urban did.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, and with the depth that we have this year, it's kind of like, okay, you don't have to worry about it as much. So that'll be fun to watch. But I'm those skill guys one-on-one is going to be, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch in the spring game. I can't wait to see what JJ does. I want to see JJ go up against Burke. Because, Burke made a little comment, I think, leading up to that Cotton Bowl about, these guys, they're all that in the high school level, but, they need to come up here and show they can do it against, the ones. I mean, he's calling the kid out before he even got on campus.
the one I'd like to see him against Burke, but the one I want to see how he handles is Igbinosun, because Igbinosun is big, he's physical,
It's
and
aggressive.
and they're about the same stinking size. So I'm kind of curious about that. And Igbinosun likes to get his hands on you. He likes to jam you, and I would be interested to see how that looks. So that would be one I'd pay admission to see.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I'm going to make a note of this. You just said they're about the same size. I have a feeling if you stood those two jokers side by side, Smith might dwarf him.
Okay.
He's a grown man at 18.
Okay. So I haven't seen him in person. I've seen Davis and Igbinosun in person. Yeah. From 25 feet away, and
I haven't seen him in person.
He's a big guy.
I mean, I saw Julio Jones playing the Under Armour All-American game. I lived in Orlando at the time, and that's who Smith reminds me of the most.
Okay.
When I look
that's
at
a fair comparison.
When I look at his body type and the way, and I mean, he's a grown man.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. So for me, yes, absolutely most anticipated in my lifetime. I have been paying close attention, and I'm not, and you guys know me, if you know me, I don't do a ton of I don't want to ever be accused of tampering, but I'm really watching Ozzy Trapillo. I want to see, I even checked his Instagram today just to see if he had posted anything, because I still feel like that's the missing link, man. If you could somehow if the rumors are true and that Hafley left Ryan Day's business card, as has been joked about on some other podcasts to be left nameless, cool. Let's do it.
Is he in the portal yet? I swear I've seen something that said he entered the portal.
If he did, I haven't seen it. And like you and I talked, we were both a little bit out of the out of commission, I'll say, this weekend with some different things. So, family and other stuff. So I'll look. And if he is, maybe we'll hop on later this week and do a live show once he commits.
Yeah. Well, there's that. And then you've got to wonder if Chip's going to bring any players with him. I don't know if there's anybody on UCLA's roster that we really want or need. I mean, it would only be along the offensive line. And they got they've got the one linebacker that we looked at last year that was from
I think
Cal.
He committed elsewhere, didn't he? Didn't he go to USC?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I have to check on that. I read an article about him over the weekend, and it said that he was at Cal for 2 years and UCLA last year.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be bringing people. Rumor has it he wasn't really the most popular guy on the, with the kids, but.
Yeah, he was on his way out for sure. And I think, and I did see where it doesn't sound like PJ Fleck's going to row his boat down there. So I was kind of hoping he would, because I wanted to sneak back in on Coy Parrish, but that's it. So, all right. Any final words, man? We got a show on Friday coming up. If anything pops with Ozzy Trapillo or anything else, we'll make sure that we get some word out either on Twitter or, hop on here real quick. But, final words from you, Dan?
No, I just appreciate all the listeners sending in questions. It's quickly becoming my favorite part of the segment. It gives us, stuff to talk about, and we're thinking about the same things they are. So keep them coming.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate the listeners, and I appreciate our followers as well. And then I think Dan and I have started to discuss maybe being able to. Our software allows for call-ins, so we're working on figuring out how we can do that to where. Because right now we don't have a show manager. We're kind of managing it ourselves. Yep. So it would take another individual that was willing and able to meet our timelines and stuff. So we're working on it, folks. Just so you guys know, we are constantly in the background talking about things we can do to better the pod. So I appreciate you guys listening today. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you on Friday for Buckeye Friday. Till then, we'll see you.
All right.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.